Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're going to dive deep into one of the biggest questions in science. What is everything really made of? We're going on a journey to trace the story of the atom, from just an ancient guess to the incredible, complex world that we've discovered inside. It's going to be fascinating. So, here's our roadmap. We'll start with an idea that lasted for thousands of years. Was the atom really indivisible? Then, we'll look at the very first drawing of the atom, the plum pudding model. After that, get ready for a shocking experiment that leads to a whole new picture, kind of like a tiny solar system. And finally, we'll uncover the surprisingly simple rules that basically explain all of chemistry.
You know, for a very, very long time, the whole story of the atom was super simple. The word atom itself actually comes from the Greek word atomos, which means uncuttable or indivisible. The idea was if you just keep cutting something, say a piece of paper, in half, again and again, you'll eventually reach a tiny particle that you just can't cut any further. That was it. That was the atom.
And just think about how long this idea lasted. We're talking from ancient Greece around 500 BC all the way to John Dalton's famous theory in the 1800s. For over 2,000 years, pretty much everyone believed that the atom was the absolute smallest thing you could get. It was the final answer. But, as we're about to see, science was about to blow that whole idea wide open.
That's right. The so-called indivisible atom was, in fact, divisible. In a really exciting flurry of discovery, scientists found that it wasn't a solid little ball at all. It was a whole complex system made of even smaller parts, which we now call subatomic particles. And this discovery didn't just add a little detail, it completely rewrote the rulebook of physics.
And here they are, the three main characters in our story. First up, we have the electron, a tiny, negatively charged particle that's super light and just zips around the center. Then, in the middle, we have the proton. It's much, much heavier, has a positive charge, and it sits right in the heart of the atom. And right next to it is its partner, the neutron, which is also heavy but has no charge at all. These three particles, working together, make up every single atom in the universe. Okay, so once the electron was discovered by the amazing scientist J.J. Thomson, the next big question was obvious. How are all these positive and negative bits arranged inside the atom? Thomson was the very first person to try and draw a map of this brand new hidden world.
Thomson's model was really simple, but also quite clever. He imagined the atom was just a ball of positive stuff, kind of like a blob of jelly, and scattered inside this jelly were the tiny negative electrons, like plums stuck in a pudding. And here's the crucial part. He figured that the total negative charge from all the electrons perfectly balanced out the positive charge of the jelly, making the whole atom electrically neutral. Here's another way to picture it. Think of a watermelon. The whole red, juicy part is the big C of positive charge, and the black seeds scattered all around inside, those are the tiny negative electrons. It's a simple picture, right? But for its time, it was a totally revolutionary idea. But you know what? Science never just stops and rests. One of Thomson's own students, a guy named Ernest Rutherford, decided he wanted to test this plum pudding model with a really smart experiment. And let me tell you, he was about to get the biggest surprise of his entire life.
Okay, let's think about this for a second. Rutherford's plan was to use tiny, fast-moving, positively charged particles as little bullets. Now, if the atom really is like a soft, squishy watermelon where the positive charge is spread out everywhere, what do you think would happen? You'd probably expect the bullets to just pass right through, maybe getting nudged a tiny bit, but that's about it, right?
Well, what actually happened was absolutely stunning and totally unexpected. First, just as they thought, almost all the particles, like 99% of them, sailed straight through as if nothing was there. But then, the surprises started. A small number of them were deflected at different angles. But the real shocker, the one that made everyone's jaws drop, was that a very, very tiny fraction, about 1 in 12,000, hit something and bounced straight back. This was a total game changer. Rutherford famously said it was as incredible as if you fired a huge cannonball at a piece of tissue paper and it came back and hit you. This one result could only mean one thing. The plum pudding model had to be wrong. It was time for a completely new picture of the atom.
So, what did this shocking result mean? Well, while Thomson thought the positive charge was all spread out and weak, Rutherford realized something profound. For one of his positive bullets to bounce back, it must have hit something incredibly dense and also positively charged. All that positive charge couldn't be a soft jelly. It had to be packed into a tiny, heavy core at the very center. He called this the nucleus.
So Rutherford came up with his new nuclear model. First, since most of the particles went straight through, the atom must be mostly empty space. Wow. Second, almost all the mass and all the positive charge is crammed into that tiny, dense nucleus. And third, the little electrons must be orbiting this nucleus from far away, kind of like planets orbiting the sun. To give you an idea of the scale here, if an atom was the size of a large room, the nucleus would be like a single grain of salt right in the middle.
But this beautiful solar system model had one giant problem. According to the laws of physics at the time, any charged particle that's moving in a circle, like an electron, should be constantly giving off energy. This would mean the poor electron should quickly lose its energy, spiral inwards, and crash into the nucleus in less than a second. But obviously, atoms are stable. They don't just collapse. So, what was going on?
To solve this massive puzzle, another brilliant physicist, Niels Bohr, came to the rescue. He didn't just throw away Rutherford's model. Instead, he added a few incredible new rules that completely changed how we think about electrons. Bohr's idea was pretty radical. He said that electrons are not allowed to orbit at just any random distance. No. Instead, they're restricted to very specific, fixed orbits, which he called energy shells. You can think of it like lanes on a highway. A car can be in lane 1 or in lane 2, but it can't be driving in between the lanes. And as long as an electron stays in its special lane, it just doesn't lose energy. And just like that, the stability problem was solved.
Bohr then gave us the rules for how these shells get filled up with electrons. Rule number 1 is about capacity. Each shell can only hold a certain number of electrons. But the second rule is the really important one. It's about stability. An atom is at its most stable, you could even say its happiest, when its outermost shell has exactly 8 electrons.
And that brings us to a super important term, valence electrons. This is just a fancy name for the electrons that are in the outermost shell of an atom. So why do we care so much about them? Because these are the electrons that see the outside world. They're the ones that interact with other atoms, and they are responsible for literally all of chemistry.
This constant desire to get a stable outer shell with 8 electrons, which we call the octet rule, is the main driving force behind all of chemistry. Atoms that don't have this perfect set of 8 will do almost anything to get it. They'll share electrons, they'll steal electrons, they'll give away electrons. This one single goal is why atoms bond together to create everything in the world around us.
And that leaves us with one final thought to ponder. If one atom has only 1 electron in its outer shell, and another atom has 7, what do you think happens when those two atoms meet? The answer to that question is the secret behind every chemical bond in the entire universe. But that's a story for another time.